Hello and welcome to another video on getting my rating up to 2400. I've had to start the game that I'm playing a little bit before starting this video because, as you may be able to see, I'm unbelievably low on time. This isn't because of bad time management. I'm trying a bit of an experimental time control with literally 0 seconds and 0 minutes for the whole game with a 6-second increment. So that means that both myself and my opponent are having to kind of play on instinct for the game until we build up enough time to make our moves. So the opening was a Sicilian type position, but I didn't play d4. It's now become rather closed up. I am going to play c4. I'm hoping my opponent pushes d4, then I feel like my knights are going to overpower their bishop. They have done knight d4, which makes perfect sense. I am going to capture them. And the reasoning is that after I take, and I'm assuming they take me, and I take them to be annoying, and then I go b3 just to solidify my position. I don't want to allow pawn c4, giving them a dangerous passed pawn. And okay, I need to be a little bit careful, but I think I can do what I originally had planned. I have an outpost on e4. My knight cannot be chased away from this square, and I've built up enough time that I can now think, or at least pretend to. I have queen h6, which is a move. I have queen g5, which is looking good. Then rook f5. That might get awkward. f4, I'm not quite attacking that square enough. So f4, bishop take, yeah. I'm going to go g3. So what this does is it does allow me to go f4. I'm going to try to gain a bit of space. I've still got this outpost on the e4 square. Now f5, rook takes. No, but I'll do pawn takes. Alright, rook f2. I'm just going to play it carefully. Very carefully. Rook f1, king over there, makes perfect sense. I'm going to do something or other. Maybe queen c2, just as a way to try and trade queens on c4. My opponent's doing this move, so they might be swinging their queen around to h3, but then that would allow my queen to come over to the d5 square. However, they've instead chosen to trade the queens. I'm not terribly upset by this. I'm planning pawn a4 next turn to completely tie them down. They might be planning an exchange sack. I'm not terribly concerned about exchange sacks right now. I'm trying to build up a head of steam here with my pieces. My knight is still very, very good. I ideally want my knight on an even better square, maybe d5. They have moved their rook. They're stopping me playing f5, which could be a pretty good move for me in the future. I think h3 might not be a terrible move. I'm planning g4, but now they've given me the square f5. Question is, do I take it? Do I go to f5? I say I do. I have no clue if this is a good move or not. It's instinct. I've got 12 seconds. I may even pre-move, but I'm always a little bit nervous about pre-moving things. I have enough time on my clock to not be doing anything stupid like that. Well, not stupid, but anything careless like that. If they take on f5, I'm just taking them. My rook and knight should be powerful enough. Oh, they have played this move. Pawn takes pawn. Yeah, pawn takes pawn. I'm going to try using my kingside majority. Come on here. Okay, now this move, actually their king can't get in. There we go. So I know I can't, well, I can, but I know I shouldn't lose now. Right, king f3. I'm going to play king to e4 next go. Right, so knight f2. They might go king g5, actually. That's annoying. But they haven't. Okay, I'm going to run my king in. they have not allowed me to move forwards. That's a very good move from them. Right, knight to h3. I'm going to check them. Okay, I'm going to check them, as I said. King d6, right. Start to bring in my king. Now, I've got some really, really good places I can go. I want to go knight back to e4 now to give myself another outpost. But they resigned. They did resign, so I'm going to first click on computer analysis, which I can't do until after I've pressed analysis board, which I should know how to do by now because I've been using Lichess for quite a while. Again, shout out to Lichess. I think it's the best chess playing software out there. Lichess, if you want to give me some money to advertise for you, that would be good. Right, so you can now see the start of the opening. e4, c5, knight c3. I'm trying to play a Grand Prix attack with f4. Knight c6, so I could play f4 and I changed my mind. I play knight f3. So d4 would put me in a Sicilian, but they play e5, one of the only moves to take me out of a Sicilian main line. So what they've done is they have weakened horribly their d5 square. And that may not be the best plan, but it does at least get me out of theory. They went d6, allowing their other bishop to move, and I just simply develop with castling. Black could go g6, bishop g7, knight e7 castle, but it's a bit slow in setting up their formation of a kind of English Botvinnik as black. And when you're playing a kind of slow setup like that, you do have to watch out for lots of tactics. So bishop e7, the kind of old Indian route of, instead of fianchettoing, playing bishop e7, and then knight f6 castles, is a fairly solid structure. It's not quite as good as the main King's Indian these days, but for the position black has, I think it's perfectly fine. Castles. Now, I think queen d2 is a mistake from me. I am trying to provoke pawn h6, or I may be able to sacrifice. Again, I'm down to 18 seconds because I've been thinking too long. h3 was better to stop bishop g4. Bishop e6 from my opponent. If I take their bishop and they take with the f-pawn, even though their pawns will be doubled on e5 and e6, that's a very, very good place for their pawns. They have more central pawns than me now. I have 3 of them, e5, e6, d6. They now cover the weak squares f5 and d5, which their pawns weren't able to reach in the previous position, and it opens the f-file for their rook. So doubled pawns can sometimes be very strong. I do take anyway because it's inaccuracy and I was playing quickly. The plus side for white is the pawns become a bit inflexible. So I am attempting to close the position as much as I can, keep the center full of pawns, and that way, if I can trade my bishop for their knight, which is likely to happen as I do it now, then my knights, as I said earlier, may be able to maneuver better than their bishop, which, spoiler alert if you've not skipped ahead to this point in the video, I do succeed in doing this. And knight e2, so I'm planning to move my c-pawn and switch over to knight g3. They make a pawn move. Not totally sure it's the right idea, but they're trying to fianchetto and give themselves more space. c3. So I'm thinking of d4, but also I'm trying to make them play d5, where they'll be thinking they don't want me to break with d4, because it will give me more space. So I do provoke this move, and then I don't play d4. I first cover e4 with my knight, then just improve my rook a d1. Now, rook f d1 may be another interesting move, because if I play rook f d1, I am signaling a plan to go on the queen side with moves like b4 and a4. I don't generally like going on the queen side in these particular positions because black does have the open f-file, and if I'm not careful, there may be sacrifices on f3 with their rook, and there could be lots of action in the center. So I like having my f rook still here, ready to go to e1, or maybe even at some stage to push my f pawn, or even to go to g1 and somehow use the g file to their king. Rook f7. I play c4 now. I want to really close everything up, which they allow me to do. I think maybe they should have taken me, which the computer is agreeing with. I'm just going to switch to that position. They would take me, I would take them. And I think now if they play knight d4, that could be very effective. Because if I take them, there's a big if, then they will have a passed pawn on d4. A protected passed pawn as well, which will be very annoying. And I won't really be able to get rid of it easily. So I may have to let them have this outpost and maneuver around my knights. Maybe knight e1 to d3 would be a way of playing this. But perhaps the lesser of two evils is to take the knight, accept the bad structure that I'm going to get, where they're going to have a passed pawn, and just play around it, still having a closed centre. However, knight at d4 earlier allowed me to take without giving away a passed pawn. As you saw, I took again, giving my knight the e4 square, this outpost for my knight, which is ready to jump in. I played b3 to stop pawn c4 because that would undermine my d3 pawn. If I lost the d3 pawn, then the knight on e4 would become weak and not really have such a good outpost anymore. So the knight on e4 can be there forever now. It can never be attacked by a piece that's worth equal to or less than the worth of a knight. So they will have to sacrifice something if they want to get rid of it. And my knights are good and in the centre. You want knights in the centre because they're short range pieces, unlike bishops, queens and rooks, which are more long range. So it's more important to have knights in the centre than it is, say, a bishop. They still centralise the bishop because it can't be bad putting pieces in the centre. Now my move g3 at first looks a bit wrong because I think what a lot of you may have seen in books or just have kind of as a general knowledge aspect of chess is that you may want to put your pawns on squares that the enemy bishop cannot attack, and the pawns will attack all the squares the bishop can't control, and my other pieces like my knight can attack the squares the bishop does have influence over, fighting for the dark squares. But I feel like I need to have some pawns on dark squares to fight back against the bishop and to fight for the dark squares as well. If I played f3 and h3, I don't really see how I'm progressing at this stage. So the idea of f4 blunts their bishop. They're never going to take on h2 now, or get anything on h2. And I've gained some more space using it to fight back. So I still haven't managed to improve my d1 rook, so I do that now. Rook d to e1 is a good alternative, I think, but I wasn't planning on moving my knight because it's so good. So the e-file is something I'm keeping closed to stifle the activity. I don't really want to fight on lots of areas of the board because that's where bishops can prove how strong they are by tacking on both sides. So I'm trying to keep this closed up, fight in one particular area where my knight will show how it can be very useful controlling both colours of squares. a5 was probably not the best move. I think black should try a6, b5, c4 and try to fight off my d3 pawn, trade it, or get rid of it in some way, and that would undermine my knight again. So rook d f1 is what I played. If I played a4 like I did later in the game, it's too early because queen takes b3 would be possible from black. So I'm just improving my pieces, playing very simple. I play queen c2 so that b3 is overprotected. They shimmy around to their queen, and I really don't think they should accept the queen trade. Again, rooks and bishops work well together, rooks and knights don't work as well, but with the trade of queens that takes away all their initiative, and their small advantage in space is now almost completely irrelevant with this few pieces on the board. So it does claim that queen g4 is better, according to a computer. That would set up an actual attack on f4, because my g3 pawn would become pinned. It would not be able to take any black piece that captured my f-pawn. So after queen g4, I have to probably play either king h1, or maybe I try to infiltrate with queen d5. They took the queens off, I happily took back. h5 was a move, I played a4. So at this stage I've got the b file now as a kind of last resort if I can't fight on the king side, which is still the area I'm going to fight on because all my pieces are on the king side. Again, it's one area of attack, so my knight could be stronger than their bishop. And also, I can play things like h3, g4, f5. I have a majority of pawns on the king side, so another area to press is to create a passed pawn. Black's only way of creating a passed pawn on the queen side is to give me pawns. If they play b5, I will take with the c pawn. Then they play c4, I take with the d pawn, and they'd finally have the d4 pawn ready to roll. But by then, I'd have such a big advantage, I must be winning, and my king at least would be able to catch their pawn on the d file running down. So again, that's why central passed pawns are not, to me, as strong in the ending as side pawns, wing pawns. Because if I had a passed pawn on b5, their king would take forever to catch it, and I'd win the race if there were no pieces left. So anyway, they played rook e7. I improved my king. Apparently f5 shoving now is correct. It's a more urgent shove than I thought it was because of rook f5. Very nice move from black. It did blockade, stopped me pushing my f-pawn. So I continued with my plan, h3, going g4 in the future. Apparently rook e8 is the best move, but I don't think rook f8's too horrible. My f5 was played, and apparently rook ef7 is a huge mistake. Black should actually trade on f5 with their rook. I would trade back and take back on f5. And then it's one rook each, so with one rook it becomes very hard for me to break through. It's also very difficult for them to break through, if not impossible. But their rook would cover lots of squares, and I'm not sure I could win in a practical game like this. Possibly if I was spending hours and hours analysing, I might find a way through. This made things much easier. F takes g6 is not correct because of knight g5, which would have won easily. I didn't see that move. Very nice, knight g5 with the threat of knight to e6. And I don't see how black stops this. Rook takes f5 may be the best move. Then knight to e6 check. King, let's give black a normal king move. King g8, let's say, just something okay. Then rook takes rook would be what I would do. I would not yet use my knight, because now if they play pawn takes rook, I think then I would take their rook because it makes things easier having just one piece each. Taking their bishop might be good as well, but I don't want to have rook and knight versus rook because those can lead to complications. If they take with their rook though, then I definitely will take their rook. And pawn takes, and I grab their bishop at the end. And my knight can just run around taking all their pawns. So after f takes g6, not entirely the right move, but still winning. We had a heavy piece trade, all the rooks came off. And apparently g4 is a huge blunder from me. I did realise that after g4, you don't really want to trade too many pawns off, because even with my better knight, with enough pawns traded, I won't be able to win, because black could maybe sacrifice their bishop or just blockade me. So terrible move by me. I should have done h4 to keep black out of the key squares. Then king f5, king f3, and I'm ready to play g4 now. I can't play it yet, but I think the plan is to go knight to f2 and then g4. But apparently knight g5 is stronger. I'm guessing bishop d8 isn't any good for some reason. It's hitting h4, so it makes g4 more difficult for me to play. I can't work out why it's bad. Let's have a look to clear things up. Knight f2. Let's give black another move. Bishop e7. Okay, knight h3. Again, let's just give black moves. Still hitting h4. Again, I have no clue what to do. Oh, of course, h5's attacked. Okay, so black can't keep the bishop hitting h4 because the h5 pawn could become weak. It's a nice maneuver actually, running around with the knight like that just to go to f4. So when I go to h3, they'd have to go bishop d6, then knight f4 anyway, and then they have to trade. And I will win with the extra pawn. That's a fairly easy win. So yeah, g4's a mistake by me. We trade, and I shouldn't win this, but it is hard to defend this position. King to e4, and yeah, king g5 is their only chance, although it's not easy to play with king g5. King g5, I think I can go king to d5. They move their king. I go king c6, I would guess. That's actually better for black. Knight e4 maybe? King to e3, not even taking g4. If they take g4, I think they lose. But again, I could be wrong, because I seem to be wrong a lot. I thought that I would be able to attack their bishop in some way. Maybe knight b7's better. But apparently they can just give it up. They can give away their piece, and then if I run over here, I can't use my knight in time to catch their pawn. I'm too slow. Wow, their pawn on d4 finally promotes and they win. Okay, so it was a draw. I can't run the king over. So that was a mistake for me to do all this stuff. But fortunately, because of king e6, this does allow me to win with using my knight to infiltrate. Well, I say infiltrate. My knight to check, forcing their king to move, and then my king infiltrates, king f5. It's now +7, so I've got two plans of winning. One is to go with my g-pawn running up. I might go g5, g6, g7, and then king g6 and keep moving up. Or if they somehow stop that, I can play various knight checks, like knight to e4 check, force their king to move, run my king to e5 and d5, check them again, go to the 6th ranks of my king, and eventually come round and take b6. So that's where they resigned. Looking at the evaluation, I was never really in trouble, apart from a few points at the beginning of the middle game. I made one blunder, which was the g4 move near the end. 5 small inaccuracies, that's no big deal. 30 centre pawn loss, that's pretty good. That's about, I want to guess, it's like a 2100 level performance, and considering there was only 6 seconds increment being added, I think it's a fairly good score. My opponent doesn't do too badly either. 48 centre pawn loss, which might be like a 1900 level performance, I would guess. But then again, that's just conjecture. I can't say the word. Conjecture. 6 inaccuracies, so a little bit more than me, and 2 blunders. So the extra blunder really cost them the game. You can see on the evaluation score, I get a big spike. Then because of my blunder g4, it goes all the way back to 0. And then when they blunder with their king e6, it then spikes all the way back up, and I win. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the game. I gained 7 points, by the way, so I am a little bit closer to my 2400 goal, and I'll see you next time. Bye.